Okay, it is 7:01 on September 28th, 2021. I call this meeting of the Wellfleet Select Board to order in accordance with the temporary enhancement and modifications to the open meeting law as promulgated by the General Court of Massachusetts. First item on the agenda is open session public announcements. Please keep in mind that public comments must be brief and the board will not deliberate or vote on any item or matter raised solely during announcements and public comments. Mike Hurley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a reminder for the general public, this weekend starts the Wellfleet Oyster Fest week, which begins on Saturday. On Sunday, October the 3rd, there will be a road race in the morning that will go from Mayo Beach through the center of town out to Quested and back. So there will be some temporary road closures beginning at around 9 a.m. and we'll try to make them as temporary as possible. And then in the afternoon, there is a shuck off and bonfire where we may be shutting down part of Kendrick Ave off and on throughout the afternoon. So we'll be putting stuff out on social media and just advising the neighborhood down there of the traffic interruptions. Thank you.
Rebecca, is your hand up?
It is. I just actually wanted to let the select board know that the Mylars for the High Toss road taking are at the office. And if you could come in and sign them by Friday, they can get them registered with the Barnstable Registry of Deeds.
Okay. All right. Helen.
Yeah, so I want to remind everybody, if you want to contact the DOT with your comments post-hearing. The hearing happened, we have 10 days. The hearing happened on Wednesday, September 22nd, so it's 10 days after that. And I believe the link to that, the way to do that is still on the website through you, Ryan, to Rebecca. It's still on the website, right, on the homepage?
No, it was taken down because the hearing was over. I can publish it again.
Please. I really hope that people haven't been trying to access that address to make their comments. We've been
It's only been down for about 20 minutes, Helen.
Well, that's not very long. Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. Moving on to just a quick explanation of the consent agenda. Consent agenda requires unanimous or no objections, I would say. So unanimous consent. If any member would like an item removed from the consent agenda, all they have to do is ask for the item to be removed, and then we discuss it like it was a normal agenda item. Are there any questions on that? Okay, so on to the consent agenda. So without objection, I waive the reading of the consent agenda. Are there any requests to remove an item?
It's unclear. Sorry, through you, Ryan.
Yep.
It's unclear to me what's on this list.
Appointment of the building commissioner and the Department of Public Works superintendent.
Yes. Okay, that's fine with me. Do you
Okay.
have a motion?
No, there's no need for motion. So without objection, the chair declares the consent agenda approved. And we are on. So
Ryan?
You don't need to vote on it?
nope.
Okay.
I have a question since this is the first time, Ryan, may I
Yep.
ask?
Yes.
So, however, when the minutes get done, this motion as printed in our packet is going to be in the minutes, yes? Okay, okay. Thank you.
Okay. So COVID-19 updates.
She
Are
is
there-
not here.
Are there any? Anybody? Okay, so on to our first public hearing. I open the public hearing on the discussion of opening Chipman's Cove on September 29th, 2021. Nancy?
Hi,
Ryan.
thank you very much.
Oh, 1 second. Mike, what's up?
I'm just going to recuse myself. I have a
yeah.
commercial shellfishing permit as well, so
Okay,
thanks.
okay, Nancy, go ahead.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen for a minute.
Okay, hang on 1 second, Nancy.
Yep.
Go ahead.
Okay. So beginning this Friday, if you can see my cursor, the south access channel, this area and the south access channel will begin to be dredged. And it turns out that by a strange coincidence, right here this year, we have an incredible crop of harvestable oysters. It's almost overstocked, if you will. And when you think about the dredging activities and what happened last year and what we saw last year with some transference of silt to the beds in Chipman's Cove. And just to be clear, this is Chipman's Cove down here. This is Duck Creek here. You know, we are worried as the department, Johnny and I have been working on this together, that we're worried that the silt would cover over the oysters here and it could put them at risk of smothering related mortality. So we have to date, as the Shellfish Department, coordinated a significant relay of these potentially threatened oysters through our own staff and AmeriCorps and a small group of recreational shellfishing volunteers. And they did an incredible job. We probably moved a quarter of the potentially imperiled biomass. So while the efforts to relay were successful, we feel that the next best step would be to open the area to early commercial harvest. Only these areas here. The rest of Chipman's Cove would be open on the last Sunday in October as usual. And the Shellfish Department staff will be on site to oversee the harvesting area efforts and to give directions when necessary. I'm going to show you a couple of photos here. So here is looking east towards like Sandpiper Hill. Over here on the left would be the marina. And that's Danny's old shop, which is where that's the end of Marvin Way, which is where the candy stripe pole is that delineates Chipman's Cove and Duck Creek. So we are proposing to allow this bar here, if you see my cursor, all the way around to the border with Duck Creek, because all of this area will be dredged. Now, if we look, east, I'm sorry, so that was east and this is west. If we're looking west, here you have the mooring basin. And if you see right here, this is a channel marker. So the channel marker is exactly up to where they will be dredging. So you see that it's just very few feet away from this incredible resource of legal sized and seed shellfish. And we feel like having wild harvesters in there, we could remove a significant portion of the biomass by leaving some of the structure of this impressive reef. And we think this is the optimum solution. Just as a point of clarity, Chipman's Cove is always by registered, if you will, by Massachusetts Division of Marine Fisheries in the open status. So shellfish are always safe to consume here, to harvest and consume, because the water quality always passes. The town, however, chooses to close this area during the shellfish spawning season. because what we basically get is a functional spawning sanctuary, which of course we value to no end. And so that's the only reason that, this is a town decision, not a state decision, to keep Chipman's closed, and therefore it's your exclusive right to open it. So what we're thinking about, and let me just show you some pictures of our efforts to date. So here, if you look, that is that little channel mark that I showed you earlier. Here's the L pier. So this is an area here where we, with AmeriCorps, with the recreational volunteers, and with Shellfish Department staff, basically by hand picking up clumps of oysters, putting them in baskets, and then putting them on the barge, and we moved them inshore. So that's what that looks like afterwards. And then here's, what it looks like before. And then here is some just basically, it's just putting them in baskets. Like I said, it's pretty redundant work, but it's effective. And here is the barge with just a lot of oysters on deck. So you can see what we've done. And then here it is as Johnny goes inshore to put them out of harm's way. But we feel like the next best step at this point is to just have the commercial harvesters go there. And here we have Rebecca and Becky, who participated a few days and helped us move oysters. So we really even got town staff involved. But we're looking at the area about 40 feet from the channel and starting around the osprey nest on the pier, and then continuing eastward, as I said, to the Candy Stripe pole, which delineates the boundary between Chipman's and Duck Creek. I would also like to offer those recreational fishing volunteers who helped us to be able to come and get one wire basket, which is what their weekly limit is during this opening. But really, if we're going to move shellfish, we need bushels to be removed daily if we're going to get these shellfish out of harm's way. And, last year we had reports of about a foot of potential of silt that was there, and potentially, this is not good for quahogs either. So we're also going to encourage clammers to come and dig these areas, beginning where we've already removed the oyster biomass. So we kind of see this as a double whammy, if you will. So let me go back over here. I don't know how to stop share. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, I have a couple, but I'm gonna let Helen go first. So
Okay,
Helen,
thank you. This is very prudent, and thanks to all the people that pitched in. First question, are you gonna need a separate little vote allowing those people to get, a wire basket full, or can that just happen without our waving our hands? Yeah.
I think that can just happen. It's under, what I will say is that I would look for the select board to give the Shellfish Department some discretion here. So let's say that, and this is discretion. Okay, you guys helped out, come out, we're there watching. And so that's just like a little bonus. But also when it comes to limits, let's say, if it looks like it's really getting cleaned out, it would be good to be able to say, okay, we've done the job that we intended here, and we're going to close it, even though we have a week before it would reopen on the 31st. And we don't know, for example, like how sellable the oysters will be, because some of them, you have to go through and call what you think your market's going to want to buy. And so at some point right now, we're just going to go with the limit for Chipman's, which is 1 bushel. But if it looks like, oh, wow, these are just going like hotcakes and we can make more progress, then maybe we would want the discretion to increase that limit. And what we would do is obviously put this in a crier and let everybody know.
Yeah, and obviously then have to have permits. But the thing I wanted to say was this is allowable under our shellfish regs under 6.4.1. The Shellfish Regulatory Board, that is us, the Select Board, can, we can move the dates where parts or all of Chipman's Cove and the other areas are allowed to be open or shut, and that is built into the regs. So this is all
Yep.
very as it should be. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so, I mean, it kind of does look like a land of bananas out there. So I do have a couple questions. The first is, in the past, the DMF has, or the DEP, I forget which one, has expressed some concern about the mooring, the area being considered a mooring basin. Are there any concerns regarding that?
No, so let me just show you here. Let me screen share again real quick.
Yeah, I know where the mooring basin is on the map.
So over here, I know that you know that, but
Yeah.
the South Anchorage is the mooring basin. So we're nowhere really near that. We're talking about this area up here and going right along to here. And it might, it might come that on December 1st, we're going to want to do something, or when Duck Creek opens, which is a water quality closure, we might want to do something in here as well, because it just was an incredible growing season for oysters. But right now, this is something that is, spectacular, and we just want to make sure that they don't suffer mortality unduly.
Okay, and then, so usually there has to be a certain number of boats that boats have to move from the front of the pier to the back before Chipman's opens. Or is that just related to the area close to the pier itself?
Correct. That's related to this area right here. So there has
Okay.
to be 10 boats or less in here in this area. It doesn't count that. And this is now under this is an absolute separate CCB. And I forget
Okay.
the number because now we have like 6 of them for CCB 13, but it does not influence this at all. This is influenced by how many boats are up front. And on Friday is the day that we begin counting, so that I can let DMF know if this is ready to open when shipments would normally open. We
Okay.
try and open these 2 together.
And then one of the concerns is making sure there's enough substrate left to catch spat, next year or the next spawning season.
Yep.
And so for this
So-
motion, what is the?
If I could just respond to that,
Yeah.
Ryan. So that's why we think that having commercial pickers in there is the perfect solution, right? Because they're going to naturally go through and cull, and they're
Okay.
going to leave some stuff there.
Okay, and you don't want any
So
just the-
recreational, we worry about it getting unruly with a lot of people out there. And the other thing is they can only take a basket a week, but a 10-quart wire basket, it's just not going to do the job that we need doing. We need bushel baskets coming out of there daily.
Yeah, so
So that's the
I'm just
difference.
looking at the motion. So the motion here is for commercial harvest only. So I'm just trying to figure out it. Did you actually want it to include any recreational harvest or just commercial only?
I mean, I think with our discretion, we could, you can do the motion as is, and then under our guided supervision, we can allow those, dozen volunteers to come out with us as a
Okay,
little
and what is the CCB number?
CCB 13.
13.2.
Yeah, CCB.
No, it's CCB 13. 13.2, I believe, is Duck Creek.
You're right.
Okay, it's not in the motion, so I want to just make sure. And you said it had its own.
Well, we're not opening the entire CCB 13, right? We're only opening this area here. So let me just, I don't remember how I wrote the motion.
Helen?
Yes. So I was going to supply that CCB, and I got it wrong. But I have a motion that includes the reference to 6.4.1, which should be in there because that's how we can do this. We are allowed in our regulations to make a variation. And also, Ryan, the non-commercial asking Nancy, the non-commercial opening is just going to be as it usually is on schedule. Yeah,
Correct.
so we don't have to touch that. You know, it's later on.
How would we define the area that's open?
I thought, did I put the outer bar in there or
It
did I
just
just
says
put
Chipman's
specific
Cove.
areas?
It just says
Okay.
Chipman's Cove, so,
All right, sorry about that. I would say, the outer bars, plural, of Chipman's Cove.
okay,
Thank
so
you.
adjacent, should we say outer bars of Chipman's Cove, adjacent to area 2, maybe? Or area, is it area 1 or area 2?
It's area 1. It's area
Area
1,
one.
adjacent to area 1. Yep, that would be great because
Okay.
that then delineates all the way down to those candy stripe poles.
Okay, I've got a motion if you want me to read it.
Yep.
Thank you. That's great.
Yeah, and tell me if you don't like it. I move to approve the opening of the outer bars of Chipman's Cove adjacent to, what's it called, section 1?
Judging area 1.
Area 1. Yes.
Area
Thanks,
1,
Ryan.
as clarified by the Shellfish Department. In other words, you'll be out there and you'll say, this is where that is. So let's add the words as clarified by the Shellfish Department on September 29th, 2021.
Yeah, 900 years from now.
Yeah. As allowed under 6.4.1.
Okay, second.
Comma,
Oh,
commercial harvest only, comma, in order to mitigate potential silting over and mortality of shellfish resources due to dredging related impacts.
okay, second.
Could I just make one comment? Could we do this on the 30th so that I have time tomorrow to communicate it to everybody?
Okay, do you want me to reread it or can we just stick 30th in there instead of 29th?
Yeah, just say the 30th instead of the 29th.
Okay,
Thank you.
Okay, so second.
I'll second.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Janet, I.
John, I.
Ryan, I.
Ellen, I.
Okay, motion carries 4-0.
Thank you very much.
Yep, thank you. So Mike, you can come back. Discussion on use of town property fee schedule. I made a couple changes since the last packet. I don't know. So I know in the last meeting, Mike, you said you had some concerns, so let's start with you. Sorry to put you on this.
Oh, that's fine. No, that's fine. So there was just a couple of things where I thought that the fees were a little steep, particularly for nonprofits. And I'm not totally clear on if it specifies whether or not, but they can be reduced for them. But I think just generally $500 for a road race may be high, but I don't know if it's including, the police detail and stuff like that, or is that on top of the fee? Because usually that's worked out with the department heads. 500, 300, 800. I just think those are fairly high prices. And even if you look at the Provincetown proposed fees for their areas, which it doesn't seem like they specify those particular events, for nonprofits in July and August, it's $300 a day for a usage fee. So I just think those are a little bit high. And the other concern I had was the where is it here? The per landings on like watercraft instructionals, because I don't know if people are doing classes and they're not using 2 landings at the same time. So if they want to do like a tour of Wellfleet ponds or something like that, I don't know if we should sort of limit that or charge them like $2,000 or something to use the different areas to give maybe 5 people paddleboard lessons or something like that. So those are my main concerns, I guess.
Okay, so The roadways one kind of came up a month or 2 months ago. One of the applicants before us, they were paying another town like $410. The concern for the road races, the swim events, and or the biathlons or triathlons is that they really tie up the town departments for a while. And Chief Pauly made that pretty clear about some of the strains that these events are really putting on our public safety services. But Janet?
Well, I will agree with Michael. I do feel that we've gone from hardly charging maybe $100 per event, but that the road races, swim events, swim and road, swim for life, they too are nonprofit, and this is one of their bigger money-making events or benefits, I want to say. And many of them, like WOMR, they're local nonprofits, and also they do hire some of the people from around here, or many of the people from, I'll say Orleans to Provincetown, where a large area, they support our towns, our people, and our people support them. So I don't know, I don't know what, I didn't hear Chief Pauly except for that like 3 meetings ago, but it ties them up, but 500 seems a lot to go from 100, which we were charging them, if that, to 500. And I'd just like to hear from everybody else on that too. And I agree that, well, I had a question on the 385 surf or watercraft instructional landings. Is it per landing a day, or is it just, that's for the whole season, right?
That's for the whole season.
Okay.
So currently for surf, it's only allowed at White Crest. And that fee currently is $385.
Yeah. And for the 600 per location for a food truck, that's when they're staying in one place for the whole season, right?
Essentially, yes. But I don't know. I mean, if it's per a weekend, I don't know, maybe we need to figure out a per weekend fee.
Yeah. Yeah, I do think this is like the first discussions, because it is a lot, and a lot of these with classes and things like that, there are some teachers that are making a lot of money teaching classes on the beach, yoga on the beach. And then there's some that aren't making that much money. And that's something I would like some clarification on. I don't know. I wasn't at the last meeting, but maybe somebody else on the board knows what these teachers are making, because they're using our town, our parking, and that also takes away from the businesses that do support classes. And so I want to kind of have it even, so I think I'm hoping this is the first of a discussion, and we're not going to vote on anything tonight, because I would like to hear from, I see Jay Norton, Rich Pauly, and Chief Hurley on, and if they have anything new to add, or even Will Sullivan can add about parking at the pier and at Mayo. So I kind of want more information.
Okay.
Thank you.
Helen?
Yeah, I want to hear from the chiefs too, and Jay.
Okay, so
But wait.
Rich has his hand up if you want to go to that first. So,
I'm just going to tag on to what Janet said briefly, if you don't mind.
okay.
So I feel that not-for-profits, I'm all for not-for-profits, getting the taxpayers to pay for a not-for-profit they may not want to support for using town property, which encumbers it in a way, physically. I happen to intersect with whatever ethanol it was that was on Long Pond over the weekend. And it kind of takes over our ways, and we have to permit it. And I'm supportive of that. But I think that they should be charged a lot of money. That just because it's a nonprofit, having the taxpayers have to pay for all that coverage of, you know, staff and so forth, and use of property that taxpayers may want to use themselves, is something I don't support, and they should be charged whatever it is that it costs us to have them on our property. Thank you.
Okay, Chief Polly.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I hope this can clarify it a little bit for you. In each of these events where we require fire or EMS coverage, they are billed on an hourly rate in accordance with the union contracts. So for the endurance triathlon this past weekend, we'll send out a bill for the 6 personnel that were working for the 6 hours that they worked. So that's covered by the event organizer. I'm sorry, the event organizer. The only challenge that we're having is that the previous event, we were not able to put together a detail, and it was a much smaller event, and we had to let the organizer know basically at the last minute because folks just were not available on the fire rescue side. So they are paying for the coverage with a separate bill from fire and police, and your use of town property fee is simply the use of the town property that you select board thinks is appropriate, if that helps.
Okay, Chief Hurley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And the same as the fire chief echoed, you know, a lot of the services required for these events is paid under the police bargaining contract. The only thing that I'll throw out there is that for some of these events, depending on the complexity and size of them, there is quite a bit of staff planning time that takes place prior to the event, the day of the event. There could be multiple meetings that'll take myself, a lieutenant, you know, which is fine, but, you know, there is a cost in general, and especially some of these events where we're coordinating with other towns and other agencies. It's not just show up at 7 a.m., do the event, and we're out of there. So I just, however that plays into any decisions on cost, you know, we do recoup cost directly to the department, but there is staff time with these events too.
Okay, Mike.
Yeah, I had my hand up before. I was just gonna ask to clarify whether they paid the departments based on the hourly, which it was confirmed. So that was basically it.
Okay, Jay. Sorry.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to clarify. I mean, in terms of the DPW services, we're really not affected by many of these. I mean, for the road races, we will sweep the roads in advance, but that will be during normal business hours. So it's very rarely that we'll have to pay staff overtime to man anything on these events. So there, in the past, I think the only one we've really invoiced was Oyster Fest. So we've never invoiced any of the road races. We did track the hours of this last one, just in case we wanted to provide an invoice, but it really does not have much bearing on our department.
Okay.
Okay, so, I mean, one of the concerns is also that a lot of these events do have significant impacts on townspeople. There are certain events that basically make certain roads impassable when they're happening. And, you know, townspeople have to plan around that if they can, but not all of them can. So we do also need to take into account how much it's impacting the taxpayers as well. So Helen?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to happen here, and we have to think about our constituents first. And I'm also going to say donating to not-for-profits is an important thing. God knows I do it. Okay. But it doesn't, you can't, the town can't write off, we can't take tax deductions for the donation of this kind of time and energy. And I'm not being stingy here, but it has to be covered in terms of the taxpayers. I just, that's our first responsibility. I, as you know, said I'd rather if that ethanol that we just had this weekend, no matter how good the causes were, it could have happened elsewhere. Thank you.
Okay, Janet,
So I would move this motion. And I think that if it doesn't work, we just alter the prices, you know, if we, that, but I do think we need to do something. It's more than I thought we were gonna do, but let's start here. Let's get it going. And yeah, I moved this. I'm looking for the page. I just lost it. Yeah, if anybody wants me to make a motion.
I would like to just double check on the various fees proposed before we move the whole
Okay.
thing. Mike,
Yeah, I would just ask to amend it to potentially like outside of the summer or something like that for road races and stuff like that, or size events, you know, where the smaller events are not as constraining on the fee. Like I know that we had that big one and that makes sense, but you know, taxpayers are, you know, the cost to taxpayers is mostly being covered through the fees to the departments that are being paid. So, and then the swim and road race event, 800, I would be comfortable with like, you know, if it were 300 and 500, you know, 300 for a road race, 300 for a swim event, 500 for a swim and road race event. I think that's reasonable. And then potentially for larger events, charging more, like if it's over 100 people or something like that. Or, you know, whatever. I think Suzanne has her hand up.
yep, Suzanne,
Thank you. No, I just had one question about the fee schedule as written. There's a provision at the end that people who hold an event without permission from the town will be fined, and I was wondering who is going to enforce that?
I
Hurley,
would assume it'd be administration.
yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
So yeah, I actually tried to play around with an off-season rates because I think more events in the off-season is, I don't know, gives us something to do, so.
Mr. Chair, can I ask a quick question?
Shoot.
What do you consider off-season? Is it Labor Day and the day after, or the weekend after, or are we going to October? I mean, our seasons have kind of changed, you
Yeah,
know?
I would be like October through
May,
April, yeah, through
April and
May,
May.
yeah,
Mr. Chair,
yep.
you know, are neighboring towns charging like this for public road use like that? Do we know what like Eastham or Truro do on this type of thing?
I reached out to both of them and neither of them got back to me,
Oh,
Okay.
so.
Because I'm fine with like in July and August, these being the rates. But I just think after that, you know, I'd like people to have the opportunity to do these things and that they happen here. And, you know, to Helen's point, if every town said they could happen somewhere else, then they wouldn't happen, you know? So this is a good place for a lot of these events to happen. And I think is enriching to the community for these events to happen too, to some degree, depending on the event. And then, so I don't know how the board feels, but I guess I would move to amend it to be $500 per day for the first one in July and August, 300 per day in the off season for the road race, same as a swim event. And then for the swim and road race event, 800 in July and August, and 500 for off season.
So before I get to you, Helen, I see your hand up, sorry. To me, I mean, June's becoming in season. And the first few weeks of September seems to be in season.
How about
So,
June through September?
yeah, that works for me. Helen?
Yeah, no amount of money can compensate for staff being assigned and committed, by the way, to these events, and then needed elsewhere in the summer season. We could charge $2,000, and if that staff was needed decently elsewhere, that's a problem. I think that whatever rates get put in this schedule of fees, it's fine. It gives some sort of, sense of what could be charged. But if you added the phrase simply or as appropriate to the event or something like that, which would give us as a us as the select board, permitting use of town property, some leeway if something unusual comes up, that would be good. So in other words, sure, $500. But if we look at it and we hear from the departments that the situation is not good for that kind of commitment, right? It isn't like we can just pull staff away from these events if there's some other major thing going on. You see, their insurance and so forth all sort of it's all structured so that if we commit, it has to happen. So if we just kept it the way it is in this document and added the phrase or as otherwise determined, as appropriate for whatever the event is. I'm not doing the language right. It would give this board a chance to tailor it with the departments in real time at that time for that event so that they could handle it. Okay, I don't know what Chief Hurley and Chief Polly might think about what I just said, but one size does not fit all for some of these events. Thank
Okay. John?
I'd just like to hear the department heads weigh in on, I see Michael's point on this, but I also see Helen's point. I'd like to hear what the department heads have to say.
Okay, who wants to be put on the spot here? Rich, I'll go to you first. Oh, Chief Polly, you're on mute. Sorry.
Okay, I think Rebecca and I are fighting each other over the unmute button, but that's
Yeah.
okay. It's not a problem.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. Helen is correct. Once we are committed to these events, we are committed to these events. And even if we had a report of a building and fire in town, I can't release those people to go to the event. Now, that hasn't happened. That's not to say it won't happen. So we certainly call on mutual aid. So that's true. But again, getting back to Mr. DeVasto's point and the in season versus out of season, to me, makes a lot of sense. I do think it makes some sense. But just so the board knows, once we're committed with 5 or 6 people or 10 people, we're committed and we can't back out of it. Thank you.
Chief Hurley?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. Yep, I'm unmuted.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll just reiterate what I said before, about, some of these events, again, the strain it's putting on the services for the day itself, but also the staff time and the planning that also leads up to it. When I first saw this, one of the things that rolled around in my head, but it could become a lot of work and problematic, is do you take more major events and break down police, fire, public works costs and present that to the board when voting on these to see what some appropriate costs may be. But again, that's kind of making this a little harder and a little more work, but to some degree, each event is different. But with my part-time staff dwindling and having some full-time staffing issues that have cropped up as of recent, trying to staff these events moving forward. And I'm telling you now, and then the fire chief can concur, surrounding towns are dealing with shortages and staffing issues themselves. So it's becoming more of a challenge. And I think you may start seeing some events that come before you with concerns raised by us on staffing. So.
Okay. Mike?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, to Chief Hurley. I think that makes sense, and I think the in-season thing kind of makes sense with that. But I would it make sense to have, in general, a use of town property form with a suggested fee for the department for staffing beyond what's assessed for the hourly for your details, just so that or maybe in this proposal we can write for all events that are over a certain amount of people, X fee shall be applied to it or something like that. I mean, I don't mean to belabor this into oblivion. I'm just trying to keep it reasonable for small events that have been going on in town that
Just from a department head standpoint, managing things, anything that we bill direct for our cost and services from any event, we get back direct to pay staff. Anytime something is written in and the town collects the fee, that doesn't come back to the department budget. So it's kind of a, that's why we bill police details separately and don't incorporate it into the town fee, because then it would be a budgetary problem for us. We'd start running short. So
I guess what I'm asking is the actual staff time that you were talking about that's not compensated.
no,
Can you bill for that, or can we assess that through fee to some degree?
yeah. I mean, if you assess it through fees for some degree, the town would be made whole, not so much the department. That's all.
Right.
Okay.
Ron, I have a suggestion to add.
John had his hand up first, so John?
Sorry.
No, we haven't heard from Jay.
Okay. Jay, would you like to weigh in on this?
Playing the unmute game too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like I said before, the heavy hitters here are police and fire, obviously. We're more behind the scenes, getting in there before the event, not actually staffing people the day of the event because they're usually held on the weekends. So all of our work is really done before that, whether it's sweeping the roads or providing cones or, extra trash barrels. It's really not that big of a burden on the department. And, furthermore, if we committed staff to an event and then something unforeseen came up, I mean, most likely that would be some type of weather event where, we have a hurricane or we have, some major rainfall where we would have to dedicate staff to that because it would be an emergency situation. But in the same sense, the event probably won't be held if that's happening anyway. So I honestly don't see that being a big problem for the DPW.
Okay. John, anything else?
Well, yeah. How would, I guess through you to Chief Hurley, In a, well, say a larger event, like a large road race, would you bill separately to the organizers of the race?
Yeah, any groups that come forward that need any type of police details, closing roads or a police presence, we bill direct to the organization.
So that would be in addition to whatever we decide is an
Yes.
appropriate charge here.
Yeah, the only thing that we do not recoup is staff time. So on some of the major events, it could be 2 or 3 days of planning on different days with meetings to get ready for the event. That we do not bill.
Okay. Helen?
Yeah, so can I read the sentence that could be inserted after the list of fees that would address what I brought up, given that there may be unusual situations, you know, like an application at the height of summer with something else going on, blah, blah. All fees may be adjusted by the select board as appropriate on a case-by-case basis. If that was added at the end of the list of all the, you know, that first chunk where all the numbers for all the fees for all the events are, it would give this board a way to adjust, given that we approve anything at all, which we don't have to do, right?
Right.
It would give us a way to adjust it. I'd like to know what the rest of us think about that. I can reread it if you want me to.
Why don't you make a motion to amend it and then we can vote on it?
You want me to make a motion for the whole thing?
I would say all right, I'll make the motion. I move to amend the proposed use of fee schedule to state after each proposed fee that all fees may be adjusted on a case-by-case basis.
Or all fees may be adjusted by the select board as appropriate on a case-by-case basis.
Okay, you just added more words.
Not many. Thank you.
Okay,
Sorry. I could have done it.
I'll
I could have-
second that. Okay,
Second.
okay,
Thank you.
all right. Roll call vote, please.
Janet, I.
John, I.
Michael, I.
Ryan, I.
Helen, I.
Okay. Mike, would you want to make an amendment for the in season or out of season?
Yeah, you know what? I think I'm all right with it as long as we can amend it up or down. Because if a small event's coming in October or something, I'd like to be able to charge them less if appropriate. So I think I'm all right with that. The only other issue I had was the watercraft per landing used, if it's 385.
Yeah,
I don't know. I guess we can amend that as well, right?
Mhm.
if you want to. I would prefer to keep it at 385 per
And we
landing.
could amend it if like somebody were like doing lessons like on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah,
Yeah, all right, then I'm fine with this.
you know, we have had applications before us that don't specify how many boats are being used and that they'll be dropping off watercraft throughout the summer at the
Yeah.
locations. So we need to
Okay.
address that. So,
Okay, I'm fine with this now.
okay.
Yeah.
Would anybody like to make a motion?
Didn't we? I thought we did.
Well, we moved to amend the proposed fee
Okay,
schedule.
I can do it.
Okay,
I move to approve the use of town property fee schedule as printed in the select board packet and amended. As printed in the select board packet and amended.
okay. So I'll second. Roll call vote, please.
Janet, I.
John, I.
Ryan, I.
Aye.
Sorry, Mike.
That's all right.
Helen,
Michael,
I.
Okay. Motion carries 5-0.
Ryan, before we go on, I have to leave the meeting. I feel really,
Okay,
and I just want you to know I'm not leaving in a snit. I just can't keep going
Yep.
tonight. I apologize. Bye-bye.
all right.
Sorry.
Bye.
Bye, Helen.
Okay, town administrator, use of town property, Max at the pier. So Charlie. Sorry. He's muted right now.
There he is.
I asked to unmute him, so all he has to do is hit the unmute.
Yep.
Oh, I get it. Rebecca has to train me every day on certain aspects of these things. Okay, maybe just a few things. I'm sort of like trying to make progress with this. There's no urgency, but obviously I'd like to get to an endpoint, so maybe we could end up with a license that would sort of start on January 1st, and then, we can talk about how long it is, but then there wouldn't be pressure to make decisions periodically when we're in the midst of the busy season. So there are a few things I wanted to talk to the board about. Now, I did receive an email from Mac Hay today, I believe. Yes. Yep. And these are just minor issues. The name on the licensee, they're still working on what LLC that will be. So these are just details that are still progressing. I guess the term on the current draft says 2021. It'll have to be 2022. And then he talked about maybe to talk to the select board about an automatic renewal cycle, so it doesn't have to come before the board each year. So that's an issue that he raised in our conversation. And then he, the fee that I put in the draft of $7,500 is really my number. That's not something that we've come to an agreement with. So that he's been suggesting $5,000. So in the end, you will have to make a decision on that. And I think that relative to the section on termination, he would just like some language, depending on how you feel about this, that the termination would be for just cause. Some language that town council would write. And then under assignments, he has requested the right to reassign the license to another party, like an LLC or an individual, that still would be at the discretion of the select board, but would not be unreasonably withheld. So those are some of the issues that he has raised to me. We did receive an email from a citizen talking about several concerns that came in today as well. So this particular person, wanted to mention that due to the location, of course, they use the town parking lot and the town restrooms and the trash barrels. And I think this citizen also was concerned about the number of picnic tables that has increased over the past few years. There used to be 6 or 8, and now there's, I guess, I forget, 12 or 14. And then the only other thing is Mr. Hay is working on an attachment. I've asked him to prepare something, that would define his building, our property, in all of the accessory items. So I think that's all I have at the moment.
Okay, are there any questions from the board?
Yes, I have one.
Go ahead, John.
The objections from the citizen, does this have anything to do with objections that were raised previously when we met on this subject?
I think they, I don't recognize, I think it's Trudy Vermeeren. And it's all items that have been raised before, but I think she's just highlighting her concern. She must have heard about it or seen it on the agenda. I don't know.
I see, because I can only say that when it comes to use of the parking lot and the restrooms and so forth, there are at least 2 other restaurants around there that have lots of people parking at the marina. And I don't see why, this one facility would be singled out.
Yeah, and I think too, yeah, thanks. And I think that's why I was trying to charge a fee that would recognize, that utilization that's more intense than any typical party. And I do know, from what I've learned as I've been going down this path, there are some other businesses that are using town property. And when I get a chance, I'll take a look at those as well. But I'm just trying to deal with issues in a more methodical way.
Mm-hmm.
As I have a little time here and there.
Janet?
So I don't know where it would go into the lease agreement, but I do think the number of tables should be decided by the Board of Health. I don't know, so I really don't know how that would work, but there should be an established seating amount. And do we want to say to something, because they're really only open Memorial Day weekend to, I think after Oyster Fest, they close down. So that's like 4.5 months, June, July, August, September. So do we want to stipulate the seasons, the amount of time or anything like that? Charlie?
Well, I was writing a note down. Yeah,
I
sorry. Yeah, and I think relative to the number of tables, that's what I'd like to do is when Mr. Hay presents the
Okay.
site plan, we would define right in there the number of tables. And then, that way we, in anything else that's on town property. So if it changes, we know it. So yeah, I'd like to do that in the attachment. And then I think I don't think it's a bad idea to talk about that seasonality issue. Of course, I don't know your community and I don't know all these businesses, so I didn't even think about that. But I could definitely bring that issue up with Mr. Hay. Because the nice thing about that, if it's closed, it would be nice to, have some of that stuff removed so it's not encumbering citizens using the site.
That's always been taken care of by them. They move, I think with the DPW, they move the picnic tables and stuff. So that's not an issue. I was just wondering if it was a kind of a legal thing that should be mentioned. And it's, again, we could change it. So for some reason, like global warming, they're going to stay open longer than 4.5 months, and we could just update the lease.
Yep.
Mike?
Yeah, I think with the tables, the number of tables, that's under our purview because there's no table service. So the Board of Health really deals with table service numbers as to how many seats they can have. But with something like this, it's really up to the select board with the number of tables, and it should definitely be written in there, whatever that is, probably what it currently is. And then, there's some ability to amend this, and this is a license that gives non-exclusive use. So this would still allow this area to be used by the public. So I just think that's an important point to make so everyone knows that. Though I do have some maybe legal concerns about that fact when we discuss automatic renewal or transferring it, because we are talking about a licensed use and not a lease or a long-term lease. So I'm not sure, but it sounds to me like if we're going to do it this way, where we're doing a non-exclusive use where it's still, the public, it's still open to the public, whether they utilize the services of the establishment, that we need to be careful not to move into some sort of lease, where if we did that, we'd have to go through a procurement process and a request for proposals. Those are my concerns basically about, what was brought up before. Other than that, I'm comfortable with the licensed use of town property as presented. I don't see any problems with it.
Okay, so I have some concerns. I mean, the fee, I mean, the value of that many seats is really actually quite high for the business. It's fairly significantly sized area as well. There's also they put a walk-in cooler on town property over the summer as well. And any other restaurant, they also have to provide, adequate restroom facilities for their patrons. I know they have no table service, so that they kind of get around that. But in the past, I believe the Board of Health put an order of conditions on, they were supposed to install public bathrooms. So it is a concern in that they are using the marina, and that facility has had to be pumped out a number of times over the summer as well. In terms of automatic renewal, I would say no. That the thing with automatic renewals is that after a little while, they tend to be forgotten and then not reviewed. So I would like to, ensure that the future boards have the opportunity to, have this brought to their attention every year if they decide to go in a different direction. I would also want a clause that states that at the very least, that the umbrellas are removed at the end of every season. Those definitely pose a safety hazard in any wind event. But the tables should also be removed if we have a storm event with a high probability of flooding or strong winds, because this is also a high velocity zone, according to the town. Those are my concerns. John?
As to the seasonality, the opening and closing days, isn't that determined by the business license that they pull?
I mean, kind of, but they can apply for whenever they kind of want, in terms of business license. So, I mean, that could vary year by year.
Yeah,
Right.
in by owner too, right?
Yeah.
But we have control over the property on which the tables are located. So that they would have to coordinate with the select board on that, I should think.
Yeah, I could build in some language on the seasonal nature of it, and then if they're going to, if they want to extend it on either end, that they would require, the approval of the select board, I guess.
Janet?
So I just want to point out that the bathrooms are more than just a concern for Max. It's also the harbor, people driving through town. What is it called? Square dancing and all of that. So I don't want to put that blame solely on them at all. And that's always been a priority, is to improve those anyhow. We also have to remember that it is not exclusive right to using that property, right? I mean, it's people that aren't eating there, have bought food there, can go there. Anyone can go there. So that's something to take into concern with the fees and all of that. And I think one of the things that we might have to relook at are the fees for the restaurants who have been using town property. With COVID, we have 2 more that are using it, and that has to be equitably managed.
Mike?
Yeah, I also just wanted to point out that, you know, if that it's a takeout establishment, so, you know, they don't have to provide public restrooms because of that. But also that if you were to just, let's, you know, theoretically eliminate all those picnic tables there is like probably 100 benches on the pier, at least. I don't know, there's like 1 million. And also picnic tables. So I don't know that you would have less people down there, you know, utilizing the business just because you eliminated the picnic tables, or how many less. I think the draw there is, you know, that you're at the pier and there are several areas where people can go sit down and eat. So I think, you know, as there is some benefit to the business for sure. I'm not saying that there isn't. There obviously is. But we need to really sort of focus on, you know, what it actually is that we're licensing. And, you know, it's not really the same as an exclusive use. And so I do think that, you know, there should be a fee paid. And I kind of feel like, you know, what Charlie thought originally seems fair to me. You know, so that's pretty much, you know, where I am, but, you know, I could be swayed.
Okay. So Charlie, what are you looking for out of the board tonight?
I think this is all I really wanted, is to see what the significant concerns are. So why don't I, you know, as I say, the nice thing is we have time, and once we get this largely done in a form that's acceptable by the board, you know, it'll be easier going forward. So why don't I continue to work with Mr. Hay? I'll get a site plan. I still have, I've already asked him about the walk-in cooler, you know, what his intentions are there. So he still has some issues that we need to resolve. So I'll just keep working on it, and I'll just bring back, you know, maybe in a month.
Yeah, I mean,
Another version.
without the walk-in cooler on town property right now, you'd be forced to close. I mean, that,
Oh, yeah, he couldn't have that on his own property, you mean?
no, there's no room.
Yeah, there's
Oh, okay.
no footprint.
Well, does he own the property next door?
Nope. Oh, yes, yeah, on 3 Kendrick, he owns it.
Anyway, you know, those are some of the little outstanding issues. I haven't, you know, hasn't been the highest priority, but we just try to keep the conversation evolving, and, you know, okay. And you know, I think the most important thing, right, is, you know, that we have the liability protection for insurance purposes, and then we define the usage so that, you know, if it does creep in the future, that the board and the town has some, you know, a basis to any actions they're going to take. So I think we're trending in a good way here, and I think I'd like to take this conversation, work on it with Mr. Hay a little further in council, and I'll come back to the board.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so on to the next use of town property. Corey Banning of Missing Voices LLC for the town pier. So I think he was on here. Yep. Hi, Corey. I have a few questions on this one.
Absolutely.
So what type of a production is Unheard Voices?
It's a feature film. Missing Voices is the production company.
Missing Voices.
Unheard is the title of the film.
Okay.
It's a psychological thriller that takes place in Cape Cod.
Okay. So it's a film that would be receiving wide release, maybe. or
It, not
warehouse?
theatrical release, it would be released on a streaming service called Shudder,
Okay,
which is it's kind of the Netflix for horror and thriller. It's
Oh, yeah,
niche
that's
market.
okay. And so before I take questions, I guess, so is Will Sullivan on? Did anybody notice?
I
He
saw him on.
was.
Yeah. So,
He's here.
okay, so, Will, I know that you must have spent some time, defining this, do you have any outstanding concerns?
No, they've been down there, and we've talked several times about what they may or may not need at the marina. It seems pretty light on any of our stuff. It's mostly just the filming and kind of people moving around. Not very heavy use of the marina itself, except for just the photography aspect of filming. And any kind of service is sort of probably sort of a neat, fun thing for the town to be involved in as well. It seems pretty light usage for us.
Okay. Are there any questions for the members of the board?
Before, I do want to say in the application, I didn't have a specific date, but about an hour before this meeting began, they got back and redid the schedule, and I have a date, which would be, let me double check really quick. It is October 19th is the date that we're looking for.
Okay.
That's
And it would
not,
just be a day. I think it's a Tuesday.
okay, good.
Are there any backup dates for weather events?
On our end?
Yeah, if it's pouring rain, are you gonna shoot?
Yeah.
Make it scarier.
Yeah, we'll be there. We'll be soaking wet.
All right. So then this is kind of a question for the board. Goes to the thing that we just went over, which is what's an appropriate fee. In the past, Wellfleet's charged $1,000 for commercial productions. If it's relatively light use, I don't know if that's necessarily warranted. What was the opinion of the members of the board?
Mr. Chair, it
Yep.
does seem to be light use. It is one day. And it just doesn't seem like, and it's off season, so I would go with whatever anybody else suggests. I mean, 1,000 seems
Yeah.
the highest, but we could also, depends on if it's a big hit movie or not. If they make a ton, if they gross $1 million, I'm gonna want more, but
Yeah, we want to cut.
yeah.
Come
Depends on
back
if
and
I'm in it
revisit
or
it.
not.
Okay, John.
How many people are involved? I mean, what size?
It
We have a
says on the
crew of about
application.
About 40 people.
Yeah, I'd be fine with moving to charge 200.
Just so everybody knows, it's not a full day. It is a light day. We have about a half a day's worth of work, actually about a fourth of the day's worth of work. For a third, because we have 3 locations that day, so we're bouncing around.
Okay, I would think more in like the $300 to $400 range. So it would sound fair to me.
Okay,
I don't know. Mike, what's
are
your
we gonna
opinion?
get credits?
Yeah, you can be an extra.
Yeah,
We might need some, yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Maybe let's do $300 and Janet can be an extra. No, I'm just kidding.
I'll be the scary person.
Yeah, come by Sat. I'll put you through. Be an extra.
Can I make a motion?
Go ahead.
I'd like to move that we approve the use of the town pier to Corey Banning of Missing Voices LLC. The times to be determined from
October 19th.
October 19th, okay. For a fee of $300.
Okay, second. Roll call vote, please.
Janet, I.
John, I.
Brian, I. Mike. I think we lost him.
He says I.
He looks
Mike.
frozen.
Yeah.
Dreams of stardom.
Okay. So now we're down to 3. Well, motion carries 3-0. Thank you and good luck. Hopefully you get the
thank
weather
you so
you're
much.
looking for.
Appreciate it.
So next is Natural Resource Advisory Board Harbor Management Plan from John Reel. If you would, could you just wait a minute and see if Mike rejoins us before starting, John?
Sure.
So I guess we'll have a quick recess. Let's see. Let's give it a minute.
He's off. Is he off?
Yeah, he froze.
Yeah. Do you want me to call him?
I can call him. I'm sure he's trying to rejoin though. So, yeah, I'll call him.
You know what? It went right to voicemail.
Okay.
So, wonder if lightning? I don't know.
No, I didn't hear anything. So, it wasn't like earlier today.
Yeah,
There's nothing on radar.
okay.
All right. So we'll give it one more minute and then I'll have John start.
Here he is. Hang on one second.
Okay. All right. Well, welcome
Yes.
back. All right. So I asked John to wait until you rejoined. So John, if you will.
Thank you very much. Good evening.
Where's John?
What we propose is a third harbor management plan after 1995 and 2005. The 2005 plan, on which I also worked, turned out to be really a re-summary of the 1995 plan with way too many recommendations. So we look forward this time to try to produce a shorter plan with a few significant recommendations, anticipating that in the next few years, some important projects would come to fruition: the wastewater, the Herring River restoration, and one of our own, which would be a new harbor survey. When those projects are completed, we will essentially have a new harbor outlook, and go into a more extensive and I hope novel plan. We have 4 chapters now: climate change, dredging, There was an action item from that was approved at the June town meeting. Shellfishing, we're working with the Shellfish Advisory Board on necessary steps. And the harbor survey, which is the next item on the agenda. So I'd be glad to answer any questions or hear comments on the management plan itself, harbor management plan.
Are there questions from the board? You got one, Mike?
John just raised his hand first, I saw.
Is this related to the draft that we had?
In March,
Earlier.
yes, yeah, it's an update of that. Yeah, I should have said so.
Okay. Mike?
I just had a question about the black custard for John. So I know it does seem to make sense to transport dredging spoils of sort of sandy stuff, but how much smell is going to be sort of, broadcast as the sediments broadcast would be done at high tide? I mean, what would be the means of doing such a thing with that type of, and we're talking about the really thick black.
Yes. It needs to be considered. There are 2 points. First of all, the smell is due to hydrogen sulfide, which is a natural salt marsh smell anyway. And secondly is we assume and we recommend that any actual implementation of the project would happen in the winter when the smell is much reduced. But interesting, you should raise that question. My wife raised it too, so we better be careful about it.
And then the other question I had was about sedimentation from that. It seems to me like if you move that stuff, and as someone who operates on a shellfish grant, when we have a heavy rain event, I'm not too far from Blackfish Creek, and during those heavy rain events at low tide, it will transport some of that black custard out into the sandier areas, and we'll get a layer of maybe 2 to 4 inches of it sometimes that'll come through because of rain moving it. So I guess I have some concern that, taking that type of fine silt and organic material and moving it somewhere else is just going to continue it washing back down into low spots or back out into the harbor. But
no, that's the critical issue. What we call it is dispersion. We have to be sure that the black custard is well dispersed in the tidal flow. Otherwise, we'll get exactly what you suggest will happen. The natural flow of the material, which eventually makes black custard, if it gets trapped, goes all the way up to Duck Creek, and we have to demonstrate that we can achieve the same degree of transportation without sedimentation. It's a critical issue.
okay, thanks. One other question, I guess, is just, is it really worth it for that fill to be renourishing with that? Is there value in that, would you say, monetarily to the town?
If all this works, the value to the town will be a significant reduction in dredging costs. If we get down the road and find out that's not going to happen, we kill the project.
Okay, that's it. That's all I had. Thank you.
Okay. John?
Yeah, well, that was a concern I had raised back when we were looking at the draft plan. As to the odor, when I was serving on the Marina Advisory Committee, Steve Swain did a presentation for us where he had actually taken some of the sediment and dried it and brought it to us and demonstrated the fact that once it's dried out, it really doesn't have any odor. I guess my question is, in the dispersion process that you envision, would, you know, if we're using this to build the marsh back up, and I know that it needs to be back in the Herring River, particularly, there's concerns with having to build up where it's subsided. Would it dry out? And if in fact it got wet again, would it start to smell, or would those elements have dissipated? And again, as the same concerns Mike raised about having it washed back out.
Well, to that question, the material, if it's been properly dispersed, would flow up toward the Duck Creek marshes just like the normal incoming material.
Mm-hmm.
And that's on a flood tide. On the ebb tide, much of it will come back out, but the largest tidal flow is out into the main harbor, not back into the North Marina Channel. So most of this material will eventually end back out into the main harbor and behave just like the normal materials which come in on every tide anyway.
Right, but I mean, we will have spent a considerable sum of money getting rid of it out there.
You'll have to compare the money that this costs against the cost of doing the dredging.
I mean, I like the idea of using this as a component of maintenance dredging, which we're going to have to do anyway.
That's it has to be maintenance dredging. If this is not done within the 1, 2, 3 year of a full dredging, you'll never be able to achieve the degree of dispersion that's necessary.
Right. Well, we have to do the maintenance dredging anyhow, or else we won't get the state portion of the funding for the project. So.
Okay, so I have a couple. One is the impact of overwashes at Duck Harbor. I know it goes into the Herring River. Kind of, I mean, it's not the natural flow based on elevations. But you know, the overwashes are causing significant die-off of you know, plant species, but also, you know, the thing that everybody's going on about is mosquitoes, which I think have driven a few people crazy over the last, you know, few months. Under the shellfishing in chapter 3, one thing is that oyster spat is extremely sensitive to lower pHs. And a lot of hatcheries, they, especially in Maine now, they have to buffer the water they're using. Otherwise, they were finding that they weren't getting any, that it was basically killing all the spat. So, I mean, that's definitely a concern going out. Having a larger amount of shellfish in the harbor, though, does help buffer the pH to an extent, because the calcium carbonate acts as a pH buffer. And then the last part in terms of the shellfishing is that I am pretty concerned about quahog neoplasia. I didn't see it in here, but I'm not sure if it was or not. But I'm pretty concerned about the impact of quahog neoplasia. So that's it for me. I don't know, those more comments and questions. So, but otherwise,
I share your concern about the neoplasia, and we've started some discussions with the Shellfish Advisory Board about that.
all right. Any other comments or questions from the board or members of the public, I should say as well? Okay. And sorry, 1 second. Is there a motion for this?
No,
No, there's no motion. Okay.
well, I'm sorry, there is. I was looking.
There is?
Yeah, so I move to approve the Natural Resources Advisory Board Harbor Management Plan dated August 11th, 2021, as presented by Chair of the Board, John Reel.
Okay. Second, roll call vote, please.
Janet, I.
John, I.
Michael, I.
Ryan, I. Okay, motion carries 4-0. So on to article for a special town meeting. So John,
This is basically the article which had been approved for the June town meeting, but had to be withdrawn because of a lack of funding. It implies a field survey of the fauna and flora in Wellfleet Harbor. We have talked about expanding that a little bit to include phytoplankton, which are shellfish food. As a birder, I would like to include birds. You can learn a lot from what the birds are doing in the harbor.
Yeah.
But the main thing is fauna and flora. We would like to get this underway as soon as possible because the information will, I think, be very stimulating to how we think about the harbor. And to that end, the article has to be written, I assume, by a borrowing procedure, since I assume the town still doesn't have the $60,000. But if that's the case, it would be on the December town meeting, and I assume there'll be a vote in December as well.
so Charlie, for the purpose of answering a question about, will it have to be would it be raise and appropriate, or would it be a debt exclusion?
So it won't be raised and appropriate unless I've really done a bad job and we haven't set the tax rate. And I'll be talking about that later.
Okay.
So that would not be a good outcome. And I think obviously, we don't want to have a special election. This winter, in my mind, costs money. So I think that the goal right now is, and I'll talk about this in more detail later, but during my report, but if we can get FY20 and FY21 closed out and get free cash certified, possibly we could have some monies to do some modest projects, this coming winter without the need to issue debt. So right now, I'd like to hold my recommendation, but my goal, I don't really like borrowing for these small type projects, but let's see where we end up.
Okay. John?
Yeah, over the last several years, the town has been through a number of, at least to my way of seeing things, exhaustive studies of these exact subjects in the harbor in connection with preparing for the dredging. The turtle studies, the various benthic studies and so forth that we paid a fair amount of money for. Why can't some of the results of these studies be incorporated into what you're doing instead of It seems to me like this is at least in part, a duplication of some very expensive efforts.
John, would you care to respond?
Yeah. My understanding is that the work about the preparatory to dredging was located up or near to the dredging areas, and this covers the whole harbor. So we're talking about down Blackfish Creek, down around Lieutenant Island, over on the west side of the harbor. Not aware of any studies there. Having said that, we would certainly look at the work that has been done and not duplicate it.
And I think that might be worth putting some focus on, before we start, spending 60,000 here and 60,000 there. I mean, I realize in the general scheme of things, $60,000 isn't a lot of money, but right now in the fiscal position the town is in, it is, from where I sit, it is a lot of money. So that's my input on it.
John, when was, I know the answer to this, but when was the last comprehensive biological survey of the harbor done?
About 50 years ago.
So for me, at least, I mean, the dredging is kind of focused on the areas that would be impacted by the dredging. There are, wide diversity within the harbor itself of different areas, with a number of different, there's different areas that, will get different fish runs. And to me, it makes a lot of sense to do a survey. But where are the other members of the board on that?
I'll chime in. I was going to and then didn't. So dredging also uses this information and uses information from other committees like the Conservation, Wellfleet Conservation Trust. So all the studies that have been done have been used by a number of people, a number of committees in town. So this is just something we kind of have to do to get a full understanding of what's going on in our harbor and where things are and how it's all being affected. And again, especially with climate change happening, we kind of need a ground survey, a basis. So yes, I'm for this.
Mike?
Yeah, I think it's necessary and money well spent really to get this data.
Yeah, and one thing, so Janet just brought this up, is with climate change, is that we are seeing a change in species. Is it, you guys have green crabs showing up out there now, right?
Green crabs?
Yeah.
You
There's a
mean
lot
blue
of green
crab?
crabs.
Blue crabs?
There's blue crabs coming now too.
Yep. So I mean, we are starting to see some of the changes in the waters based on, temperature. So, so Charlie, for the purpose of motion, if we don't identify we can't really move on them as printed as in the packet, I don't think. Would that be correct?
Yeah, I think what we could do is just insert the language as submitted, recognizing that we're going to be working on a warrant with council and the select board and the finance committee. So we can amend it once we get some more definition.
Okay, I move to insert and recommend an article on flora and fauna. I move to insert and recommend an article for flora and fauna survey of Wellfleet Harbor as recommended by the Natural Resource Advisory Board into the 2021 special meeting warrant.
Second,
Okay, roll call vote.
Janet, I.
Michael, and just real quickly, it does say in the article, raise and appropriate and or transfer from available funds. So
Yeah.
I think we're covered either way. So aye.
Okay. John,
All right, aye.
okay. Ryan, you don't have to vote with us, you know that, right?
Yeah, he knows it.
I know that.
All right,
But I think I see the point
yeah,
of getting caught up on the on all of the what's going on instead of the separate items that we addressed in the run up to the dredging.
yeah, and usually a study like this will utilize a lot of the pre-existing studies as well.
Okay.
So,
John, if I may I contact you to be sure I can get access to the studies that you're referring to?
Oh, absolutely.
I will do that. That will be very helpful.
Sure.
okay, so then NRAB charge. Do you have a revised charge, John? We didn't receive one.
No, I don't, and I'm going to suggest that we not vote on that tonight. I'll just talk about the issues. And it really comes down to the working relationship between the Natural Resource Advisory Board and the Shellfish Board. We work very well together. We meet together, we talk together. The charter for the Natural Resource Advisory Board talks about a continuous review and updating of the Shellfish Management Plan and the Harbor Management Plan. In the charter for the Shellfish Advisory Board, there's no mention of any plan. So I think I would like to see a clearer statement of the responsibilities of the two committees. I think it makes sense for the broader Natural Resource Advisory Board Harbor Plan to come first, and then the Shellfish Plan to follow up on that, but they're equally important. And the language of the current articles establishing the two committees doesn't recognize that. So I'm just would like to postpone this till the spring town meeting. I would love to have any advice or comments from any of the select board members on their view of the role of the two committees. But there's more work that needs to be done now before we ask for a vote.
Okay, and then my understanding is that I think you were also discussing about adding the ponds to your charge as well.
That's right.
Okay.
That's fairly straightforward. We charters notwithstanding, we did a ponds plan 10 years ago and was never mentioned. So we thought we ought to make this one legitimate.
Okay. Mike?
Yeah, the last shellfish management plan was like 2006, right? Right after the.
That's right.
2007. And when I was under the impression that the Natural Resource Advisory Board is sort of like the primary initiator of that plan, working with the Shellfish Advisory Board. But I'm not sure exactly how that went, but I think that it was my understanding that the Natural Resource Advisory Board basically did the bulk of the of the updating with, in conjunction with the Shellfish Advisory Board, but that it kind of fell on Natural Resource Advisory. But maybe I'm wrong.
My memory of that, which is 15 years ago, so is that Natural Resource Advisory Board did our plan, and then encouraged the Shellfish Advisory Board, let me put it that way, to do their plan, which they did, and it turned out to be a good plan. I would like things to be a little more transparent now.
Yeah, makes sense.
Okay. All right, so moving on, I guess.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for
Take care.
coming.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
So amending the Council on Aging Advisory Committee's Advisory Board's charge. So I actually went before the advisory board with the modified language, and they were in favor of it. They did add an amendment to change it so that there was over 50-year-old population instead of 60, and then also the meeting time that was they actually had a set meeting time that was specified. So we removed that as well. Are there any questions in regards to the amended charge? No? Okay. I move to amend the Council on Aging Advisory Board's charge as printed in the Select Board packet.
Second,
Okay, roll call vote.
Janet, I.
John, I.
Michael, I.
Ryan, aye. Okay, motion carries 4-0.
Hey, Ryan,
Yep.
was there something, there was something before that about that Joe Aberdale was supposed to present?
So that's actually been postponed, sorry.
Oh, okay.
So and that's been postponed. But he'll be I guess coming before the board on the 12th. There's a number of marina related items coming before the board on the 12th. So, all right. Lillian Greens, yeah, yeah. All right. I know that she was on here earlier, so it's Lily Ann Green, so it's misspelled, and yeah. So, can you unmute her? Sorry.
She's all set.
All right. Yep. So this is a letter. It wasn't ready in time for the packet, but I sent it to the board right after. It's basically a letter encouraging the reestablishment of the Seashore Advisory Council. So Lily, could you briefly just, I think we're all on board with this, but if you could you just briefly say, I don't know, say a few words?
Thank you very much for the opportunity. The Cape Cod National Seashore Advisory Commission was the first advisory commission established in the United States. And it was established after the seashore was in operation. It was established in 1961. And the way the legislation has been written is that every 10 years, there has to be a reauthorization in Congress. So it has to go through the House, the Senate, and be signed by the president. And unfortunately, what happened is Donald Trump came in and disbanded all advisory commissions all throughout the United States. There were over 190 of them. This advisory commission is the last one to be reestablished, is my understanding. And it was just, it seems to be that one of the issues was it got caught in that 10-year cycle. So that seems to be one of the issues. So at this point, I've been working with our Congressman Bill Keating and Senators Markey and Warren on reestablishing this since Donald Trump disbanded all of the advisory commissions. But I've been recently in touch with Ed Markey's office, and I was in, gratefully, Congressman Keating has already had this passed through the House. So it's a bill that's been passed in the House. It needs to be come before a Senate subcommittee, and then it needs to be voted out of committee and get on the floor, get voted on, and then go to the president. So Senator Markey's office says that it would really help a lot if all the seashore towns can write a letter coming from either the select board or the TATMs of the town. And also if there could be any individual letters as well. And this will help to get it a hearing and eventually get this passed. And I think we all agree that the Seashore Advisory Commission would be very helpful. I've been hearing that from people throughout Wellfleet. They always mean I was the last advisory commission member representing Wellfleet the last time it met. And so I would encourage you to either sign it yourself or as in 2020, the TA signed it and sent it on. And when you do so, if you can copy me, because Senator Markey's office has asked me to collect all the letters and send it to them so that they can package it up and send it as well. So it's actually presented to the subcommittee. And again, Senator Joe Manchin is now the chairman of that committee. And I'd ask you to just add one more member, Steve Daines, DAINES.
We're sort of losing you there.
Yep.
Subcommittee, the National Park Subcommittee. So that would be an addition. I just received that from Senator Markey's office.
What is Steve
Other than
Gaines'
that, they thought all the
title?
language was fine, and basically it's the same language as the letter that was sent in 2020. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
What is Steve Gaines' title? All right, looks like we've lost her.
Sorry, I'm having a hard time
Yep.
hearing.
So I move to send the letter as provided to the board by Lillian Green to
Sorry,
Senator.
I'm having a hard time hearing you.
Yeah, you have a bad internet connection.
To Senator Manchin, Senator John Barossa, Senator Angus King, Steve Gaines.
That's Daines, D-A-I-N-E-S.
Daines. Okay,
Yeah.
Steve Daines, Senator Ed Markey, Senator Elizabeth Warren, and Representative William Keating. Would the board want a single person be authorized to sign it or have it come from the entire board?
I think the entire board should sign it.
Okay,
This is an important letter.
I agree.
okay. Mike?
I'm just not seeing this letter in the packet. It was emailed
I
to us.
didn't see it either.
Yeah, it was emailed. It came after the packet was printed,
Okay,
but it was emailed.
that's fine. I just haven't read it, but I've read enough of Lily's letter writing that I think I'd be comfortable signing it. But,
Okay,
let's see. So we have a motion right now that's seconded.
yep.
Did you
Or
move
was it seconded?
I'll second it.
Okay. Okay, roll call vote.
Janet, I.
John, I.
Ryan, I.
Michael, I.
Okay. Motion carries 4-0. Okay.
Thank you, Lily. Bye-bye.
yeah.
Good job.
Okay, to set a date and time for a special town meeting. I have confirmed with Rebecca that we have reserved the gymnasium at the Nauset High School, which would provide enough space to, especially indoor space, to adequately space everybody around. Are there any questions? Okay, so I move that the town of Wellfleet hold a special town meeting beginning at 10 a.m. on December 4th, 2021, with alternate weather dates of December 5th, 11th, and 12th to be held at Nauset Regional High School Gymnasium in Eastham, Massachusetts.
Second,
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Janet, I.
John, I.
Ryan, I.
Ryan,
Yep.
would it be use of both sides of it? Do we know?
I am not 100% sure, but I can circle back and
Clarify,
check.
that'd be good to have both.
It's the entire gymnasium.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Michael, I.
Okay, motion carries 4-0. All right, sorry, this is worded a little differently. Yeah, to issue a town administrative search consultant RFP or any alternatives there too. I know that there's some questions about hiring a consultant or not. So I'd like to let the board weigh in on that first.
So
Mike,
I don't think it matters.
okay. Mike,
I think it's important to hire the consulting service. But I do appreciate that we're advertising and soliciting people to serve on the select committee this time, which we didn't do last time. We
Yes,
kind of,
we did. Yes, we did,
we
Michael.
put names forward, but I don't think we advertised.
No,
well.
people in town, we did. Yeah,
Okay, I guess I don't remember that.
yeah.
But
But we had to,
anyways,
you have to, yeah.
okay. Well, anyways, I think it's important to utilize a consultant. And I think just the administrative tasks and to do a little bit of headhunting, but I think that that when we do it, we should make sure to clarify what we would like them to do and what we would like to do on our own when we're soliciting bids.
okay. John,
I'm frankly opposed to the idea of hiring somebody to do this for us. I think we should be capable of advertising in the appropriate journals and forums. I would like to hear Charlie weigh in on that. I'd like to hear what his views are, but my instinct is to oppose this.
okay, Charlie,
So I've served on, a number of these committees in different places. The last one in Provincetown. I think you have to recognize that, particularly if you look at our capacity in town hall right now, I have some governors on legally and how many hours I can frankly work. So I'm trying to manage all the critical things that I'm doing because I can't violate the law because it would just be devastating for me personally. And I really, so I won't. And then the other thing is that I need to focus my time and energy on the fiscal issues I'm dealing with, the town meeting warrant preparation, the budget, the capital plan, the financial forecast. And then, so then that means, a lot of this would fall on Rebecca Eldridge. And she's pretty actively engaged in day-to-day issues in the office. So, you know, I did go through this in Provincetown, and you know, there's a lot of coordination work that goes into this. You know, there's the recruiting side. These firms do have access to different people to let them know about a community. You know, my goal on the financial side is to get our house in order so that we can represent that, you know, we're heading to a good place. And that we've addressed a number of these issues, and therefore we get more qualified, interesting applicants. So, you know, I think you're talking about approximately $10,000. There is some money in the town administrator's budget, I think $20,000, so we could use that money, I believe. I'll have to double check with Lisa someday. So it's, you know, in order to do this right, I just think we need some help, and the consultant is a help. And when I worked in Provincetown, the committee, the town administrator, town manager search committee up there, they managed everything. They directed, they provided a tremendous amount of guidance and input. But there's a fair effort that goes into this, and I'd like some help.
Okay. John?
Well, now that you put it that way, that has made it a lot more clear. I appreciate that.
Yeah, it's kind of similar to just hiring an extra person because all these applications are going to have to be vetted and reviewed, background checks, references checked. It's a pretty extensive process.
We know how much you have on your plate, and certainly Rebecca has done a fantastic job with all that she has to do. So I understand.
Okay.
And I would say
I
too,
stand corrected.
no, I appreciate your confidence, John. And I would say too, is like, I definitely would love to be involved in the process. And I was in Provincetown and a few other communities I've served on, so I think I can help. But if it's not the burden of all this responsibility, would make it much more manageable. So.
Okay. So I move for the town to issue an RFP as printed in the select board packet.
Second.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Janet, I.
John, I.
Michael, I.
Brian, aye. Okay, motion carries 4-0. Okay. The CLRF funds. So basically, these are funds that the town received as part of the CARES Act and the subsequent acts similar to it. Charlie, what is the current amount received to date?
That would be, so to date, we've applied and received our first allocation on July 1st, which was $142,558.50. And then we'll receive an equal amount in July 1st of 2022.
Okay, and there's certain uses that there's only certain uses that you're allowed to use it for. There's a whole, but it is pretty broad on terms of what it is. But one of them is based on demographics, which allows you to use it for affordable housing. It can't be used for market rate housing. It has to be affordable housing in this instance, because it is targeted towards the demographics on the, it's demographics that are more significantly affected by basically the impacts of COVID. And so are there any questions at this point?
I guess I would just like to make sure, so obviously affordable housing is always a priority, but with the way our our books are now, our bookkeeping is now, is this something that Charlie recommends, or do we need a little bit for some extra other funds or something like that? Water?
Yeah, Ryan and I've chatted about this a little bit, and initially, I was like, oh, maybe we should use some portion of this for revenue replacement. But, I think in the end, so, it's really, I hate to say it like this, but it's only $285,000. It's not gonna, solve our issues on the fiscal side. So, and I just, I like the idea of really applying it to housing, because there's broader categories of housing we can use it for. It could be housing stability services and other types of emergency assistance that we want to use for people who are, homeless or close to homeless. And so I like the idea of really dedicating the money for housing, sort of under the jurisdictional control of the Housing Task Force. Because even if let's say you use 50 grand a year for revenue replacement, we're $23 million operation. It really won't matter.
Okay. So before we get to you, John, this is a question of Mike. Mike, so you're on the Housing Trust.
Yep.
Does the Housing Trust also handle like rent assistance?
Yes, like right now, actually, though, the Affordable Housing Trust is in the process of having the funds transferred from the trust fund to the actual trust that it has. So everything right now is still being allocated through the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, which is a separate fund. And I believe the control of that fund is all being shifted over to the Affordable Housing Trust currently, but it hasn't shifted over yet. So it's kind of like an odd position, but I think there's members of the Housing Authority that are also, and the Community Housing Partnership that are also on the trust. I think the Housing Authority has been managing the trust fund prior to this. So right now it's in transition but it will be the part of the purview of the Affordable Housing Trust.
Okay, and is it the Affordable Housing Trust or just the Wellfleet Housing Trust?
It's called the Affordable Housing Trust.
Okay. Okay, John?
Just a question. Charlie, you mentioned a dollar amount and it blew by me. I was just curious what that was.
A little in excess of $285,000 over 2 years.
Yeah, well, it makes perfect sense that, why dissipate that in other areas when it could be focused and actually do some good in the housing trust.
So I move to dedicate all CLRF monies not used by administration to the Wellfleet Affordable Housing Trust to be used for affordable housing and housing assistance.
Second.
Okay, roll call vote.
Can I just add as allowed for in the CLFRF monies?
Yep. Okay, so as allowed. CLRF, yeah.
We just have to make sure the funding gets spent appropriately.
Yep. Okay, so was there a second?
Yes.
I think John seconded him.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Janet, I.
John, I.
Michael, I.
Ryan, I. Okay, motion carries 4-0. Where are we next? A lot of paper.
A lot of paper this time. I think we're almost done. I think we're at.
We're getting there.
I
think it's the speed limit.
It's East Commercial Street in Main Street.
Okay. Yeah. Discuss the possibility of well, the speed limit. So, all right. So Brad, Richard, if you may. Can you, yeah.
Thanks to the select board, Chairman Curley, and all the members for having us on tonight. And without further ado, I want to pass it over to my compatriot here, Ruth Bishop, who's lived her entire life right here, most of it.
Okay, hi, thank you all very much. I'm Ruth Bishop. And what we are proposing is that the town adopt a new law that was made into law by the state of Massachusetts in 2016. And this law allows every town government to control the speed limits within their town on town roads. What we used to have to do was do a lot of different studies and a lot of research on the police department's part to get all of the studies done and all of the paperwork processed. And then they had to send it to the Mass DOT for approval in order to change any speed limit. This new law, which is Chapter 90, Section 17C, allows the town to vote this law into their bylaws. And then if that is passed at town meeting, then the select board is able to set the speed limit from 30 miles an hour, which is now the state mandatory for local town roads, down to 25. It also gives the select board the authority to make special safety zones to lower it even further in certain areas that would be required for that. So far, 152 towns, excuse me, not 152, but 52 towns in the state have passed this law to be effective into their town municipalities. And so what we're asking is that this law be put into the special town meeting and voted on by the town, so that we can then have this law in effect on our books here in Wellfleet.
Right, and we view this kind of as a common sense public safety measure that eliminates unnecessary expenses for the town and empowers the community in a way that it just really makes sense. So, and that's one of the reasons that we've got, at this point, just in 2 days of collecting signatures, more than 40 signatures, from our neighbors, and which you have all in front of you. And so that's what we have.
Okay, John?
Yeah, first let me say I'm all in favor of this. I had a question. In looking through the material, I saw a reference to a previous town meeting, I think in 1981. And there was a reference to a statute, Chapter 90, Section 20A, 20 and 1/2A. Is that different than what we're looking at now?
Yes.
Okay. So this has to go to town meeting, in other words, before.
Yes, it would have to go to town meeting to opt in. We got an opinion from town council earlier this afternoon. I sent it to everybody. It looks around like 2:30. So the town, how it would work is that, well, we would direct town council to, or we would draft an article, basically, and then under the advice of town council, and then at town meeting, the voters would, vote whether or not to adopt it or not, or opt into this chapter and section of Mass General Law is the best way to describe it. And then the next step would be that the select board would then vote on where they might have a speed limit at 25, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I would only add that and I do favor this, I would only add that this is only as good as the enforcement. It will do no good if it's not enforced. I routinely see people doing well in excess of 30 miles an hour through town, especially in the summertime.
Yeah, well, the police department did send, or it was either Jay or Mike, I forget. One of them sent a traffic study, a brief traffic study, and there was a couple that were going pretty quick, I'll just say. But overall, the majority of the average speed was, I think, 26. And their brief
Yeah.
observation of it. So, Brad.
Yes, actually, it was I who wanted to speak.
Okay. And sorry, what was your name again for the record? Ruth. Sorry.
That's all right, Ryan. All right. We have in our paperwork a proposed wording for a warrant article. And I just wanted to let you know that we have that there in our paperwork that we gave to all of you. It's on the second page.
Yeah, I mean, we would do it a little different, just because it's basically it. So, I don't know. It's just easier to have a more wider ranging article. Rather than just have a very small area. And then the select board would basically, say where the 25-mile-per-hour zones are. And that's required by Mass General Law. The select board has to decide where those zones are. So, John, do you have your hand back up?
No. Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, so
the one last question or point that we have is that we are looking to, have, once this goes through, we're looking specifically to have the speed on Main Street and East Commercial. That's what the petitioners were looking for. So in this first bit, so thank you.
Yep. And town council did supply a recommended motion. So I move that the select board would prepare upon the advice of town council a warrant article to see if the town will vote to accept the provisions of general laws, chapter 90, section 17C, relative to the establishment of a 25-mile-per-hour speed limit on municipal ways in thickly settled or business districts within the town.
Second.
Okay. Before we vote, Rich or Chief Polly, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would, I'm not opposed to this at all. My question would be, has anyone consulted with the police chief about this? And my second question, or my second point, I guess, is that Mr. Wolf is correct. This is going to take enforcement, and enforcement means more people. So when we come around to town meeting again, when the fire chief and the police chief are requesting additional staff, be aware, because we're losing people. We can't keep people here. So I just want the board to be aware of that as we approach into the upcoming budget season. Thank you.
Okay. Chief Hurley, if you could.
Yep, I think I'm unmuted now, Mr. Chair. Yep, nope, I appreciate the quick moment. DPW director and my lieutenant, Lieutenant LaRocco, have been working with the neighborhood and the neighbors down there throughout the summer. So no objections here from the police department. Again, throughout town, we have 6 to 8 roadways that are in this type of situation with between volume, activity, it's a challenge. And again, with limited resources and staff, it's really hard on top of everything else to pay close attention. So we'll be looking at other mediations on top of this throughout the winter and during the budget season to get other type of speed signages and other things in these neighborhoods to try to alleviate these issues. And it's not just this area in town.
Yeah, I always think of the corner right in front of Town Hall, where you have all the people crossing on foot and, you know, cars coming down the hill. But anyways, so can I have a roll call vote?
Janet, I.
John, I.
Michael, I.
Ryan, aye. Okay, motion carries 4-0. Discussion and possibly
Good job.
vote on appointing a dredging clerk of the works. I see that Chris is on here. Chris, if you could. And before you start, do you know what you're signing up for? So, because I mean, it says you perform site inspections 2 or 3 times a day and issue a report on each site inspection. So,
Can you hear me yet?
Yep.
Yes, I do know what I'm signing up for. I tend to go by either the ocean or the pier once or twice a day anyway, so I'll make it the pier. My experience is managing large engineering construction projects, so that's very familiar to me. It's only for 3 months. Most of my projects have been much longer, like 33 months. I'm well aware of what I'm getting into, and I look forward to doing it.
okay. Mike?
I just want to thank you for dedicating the time and energy and your expertise to this. I know you have experience in this type of thing, so thank you.
Well, again, it's my pleasure. I look forward to it.
Yeah, you're committing to a significant amount of work on behalf of the town. We definitely appreciate it. I move to appoint Chris Aguilar as a dredging clerk of the works. Sorry, I know I'm mispronouncing.
Al Geyer.
Al Geyer.
Right.
Second,
Okay, roll call vote.
Janet, I. And thank you.
John, I. And thank you.
Yep.
Michael, I.
Ryan, aye. So thank you very much. And good luck.
You know, this is so important. And okay, so this is where I put my plug in for the dredging committee. Chris, Chris, because he's chair, he's just done a great job. Joe Aberdale, Alfred Picard, Skip Arnett, Annette, who else is on there? Chris, I forgot.
Kevin Coakley and Kurt.
Kevin Coakley, yeah. It's moving along, and this will just solidify and secure our future with the plan and everything. So they're doing a great job. Saturday, right? It's Friday or Saturday?
Friday.
Friday.
First, so we'll see you all down there on the rising tide.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So to vote to accept the provisions of 940 CRM 29.10. So this requires a simple majority of the board. I actually meant to have this on as part of the remote participation vote, but yeah, it was an oversight on my part. So are there any questions regarding it?
Can't find it, no.
Okay, so I move to accept the provisions of 940 CMR 29.10.
Second.
Okay,
Wait, yeah.
roll call vote, please.
Janet, I.
John, I.
Michael, I.
Ryan, aye. Okay, motion carries 4-0. 3-foot shallows on Main Street. So after we voted and Joe McLaughlin, Stantec communicated to the Mass DOT request for change from a 5-foot bike lane to a 3-foot shallow on Main Street. They said that they wanted it in writing. So this is a very quick, how many sentences? I think it's 2 sentences, just effectively saying that we voted for a 3-foot shallows on Main Street. So, Mike?
I just didn't remember the vote actually being that, but that to reduce the bike lanes. I don't remember the exact language of the vote, but I thought it was to reduce the shoulder to the minimum amount.
Yep. So that's the motion, which I didn't look up, but it was to seek an exemption to reduce the minimum shoulder size seems to be 3 feet. So it would be.
Yeah, that's what's not clear to me,
Yeah.
because during the public hearing, when I asked that, it was unclear whether there was a minimum total road layout.
Yep.
Per lane layout. So they're narrowing the road on Main Street, the actual road layout for the lanes. So the lanes are going to be 1 foot narrower than they are right now. So it's unclear to me whether it could be a 2-foot shoulder or a 3-foot shoulder. I'm not sure, but I'd prefer it to be the minimum size allowed.
Okay.
The minimum shoulder size and to share the road.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that wasn't the vote at the last meeting.
I don't remember what the language was. I just
Yeah.
thought it was because we thought that the 3-foot was the minimum.
Yeah.
I just don't know that it is.
Yeah, we're not, I haven't heard differently from Stan Tech either.
Could we amend the letter and just say that the select board voted as of today? To
We can amend the letter.
reduce or the select board is seeking a waiver on Main Street within the project area, requesting that the shoulders be reduced to the minimum amount and a share the road bicycle accommodations be made in
Yep.
place of the proposed 5-foot bike lanes.
That sounds fine to me. So I'll second that.
What's the motion?
I
To
move
amend the letter.
to amend the letter to read, and do I need to just say that again?
I guess so.
Yeah.
Okay, I moved to amend the letter to say that the Wellfleet Select Board is seeking a waiver on Main Street within the project area, requesting that the shoulder be the minimum allowed and that a share the road bicycle accommodations be put in place of the proposed 5-foot bike lanes.
Can you repeat it? I'm only kidding. Got that, Rebecca?
I
The first
have it.
time I said it was better.
I
but
know. That's why I wanted you to clarify it and say it again, because it's a long one.
I said it better the first time.
I'll
Yeah.
just go back to the recording and replay it 3
Okay.
times.
Whatever I said the first time when I moved it, then
All right.
Ryan.
Second.
Okay.
Second. Did Ryan second? Okay.
Yep. Roll call vote on the amendment, please.
Janet, I.
John, I.
Ryan, aye. Motion carries 4-0. I move to send the letter to Mass DOT as amended.
Second.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Janet, I.
John, I.
Michael, I.
Ryan, aye. Okay, so motion carries 4-0. We have select board goals. This is more of a review of the goals from that we had last year. I definitely can say that, you know, the year did not go as expected. So, I don't know. Are there any questions here or anything?
Well, I think the, one of the things I wanted to say is the, oh, God, I'm forgetting the word. What's our regulations? For the, we're supposed to choose like 3 to 5, really 3 goals a year for the select board. And that is to give the town administrator something to focus on or prioritize. So yes, our town needs, I think I counted yours up last year, right? Yeah, you had 20 goals, right?
Yeah.
And you're supposed to have like 3 or 5
No,
to give them a way, you know, something to focus on. So yeah.
There's nothing that says 3 to 5.
Yes, there is. It is. Yeah. And our come on, what am I thinking of the word?
I think that's for the TA. There's like,
Sorry, I disagree. It doesn't matter.
Okay.
20 goals is a few too many, Ryan. You can narrow it down to maybe like 10, 5, I don't know.
At least I got a few of them done.
But we're supposed to do about 3, you know, seriously. So yeah, everybody can do that next time. Think about it and present it.
Yes.
We may want to wait till we have a permanent TA.
So
No, there are goals. There are goals. They're not the TA's goals. There
Yeah.
are goals to guide the TA.
And typically the select board does this after the election. But I just,
Yeah.
it was actually Mass DOR that reminded me. So yeah, they're interested in what our goals are. I can just say that.
Oh, okay.
So
Department of Revenue is?
yes.
They want to know about replacing the benches at the town hall.
Probably.
You know, that's been discussed a lot of times and nobody can come to the same conclusion,
Well, they're uncomfortable. I think everybody's come to that conclusion.
you know.
Okay.
All right, all right.
So we'll try to go over our goals next meeting. But is there anything else anybody would like to discuss on these before we move on?
I guess, Mr. Chair.
Yep.
I have sort of realized that I probably need to be more specific about a year goal because I tend to just sort of think in overall goals. So it might behoove us to sort of prioritize these goals, 1 through whatever, and that way we have a sort of prioritized list with maybe some specifics in there. I mean, that's my goal in writing these goals this time, or revising them.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. I mean, we know that last time, yeah. You know.
Well, that's all.
Remember what happened last time when we tried to do something like that, so.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
It's just, yeah, whatever. Move on, please.
All right, so select board reports. So I have a couple. One is that I've been in touch with Jay Norton and Jill McLaughlin about coming before the board to analyze and address the private property impacts on Main Street, on the Main Street component of the Route 6 and Main Street project. I don't know when that will happen yet, but I have been in contact with them about it. The other is that I went to the Board of Health Conscom wastewater meeting, and they are still proposing this IA regulation at this point, but there's a significant amount of disagreement between those boards on it as well. So are there any other reports by the board?
I had a really good time in Colorado.
Good.
Welcome back.
Yeah.
Okay, so town administrator and assistant town administrators report. So I mean, this is, I like having the assistant town administrator report as well. I did notice that, so. Charlie, if you may.
Yeah, well, we're so nice. I actually get to see Rebecca almost every day, so it's really exciting to have her right here in town hall. So the first several things I'll talk about is the financial management issues. So the Department of Revenue has, completed their site visits, and they're going to be working on a report that they'll present to the select board at a public meeting, as I understand it. And that effort's going to take about 2 months, but it will include a series of recommendations on a number of areas based upon these meetings with staff and town officials. So anyway, that's in pretty good shape. The town audit, Mary McIsaac, Lisa Solvay, and I, we're moving the town audit up. We'd like to make sure that the three of us around so that we can work directly with the auditor. And, let's face it, we have a goal of dealing with all of these problems and getting a solid, clean audit for the town of Wellfleet. So they'll be here December 13th, and we're already working internally to prepare certain documents for them so that it could be relatively timely and efficient. So that's good news. Tax bills, obviously it's just another top priority. Lisa and Mary are working with your town financial staff to populate this gateway portal with the Department of Revenue with all the necessary backup information so that we can get our tax rate, set. Ideally, obviously, we want to get the tax bills out in October. We do have some challenges that I'll talk about, I guess. Now I'll talk about it now. On a whole broader perspective, we're kind of clawing back 2 years, so you haven't closed your books for FY20 or FY21 because there's a lot of corrections issues that need to be uncovered. So we're working hard to, claw backwards and deal with all of these matters. And then, of course, set the tax rate, get free cash certified. They're all pretty complicated and they're conflicted because of all the problems we're dealing with. But, I would say we're making pretty good progress on all of these elements. The big issue that we're working on right now, particularly focused by Mary McIsaac, is the biggest issue that was mentioned in the audit, which is cash reconciliations. So Mary was under a contract with the town of Truro and under a contract with Wellfleet. The Truro contract is done now, so she's focusing even more of her energies on Wellfleet. But cash reconciliation is our major thrust and the most critical element that we're working on. So they all tie together. And as we kind of work on these pretty complicated issues. The finance team does meet every other Tuesday. We meet in a sort of a mini staff meeting so that we can talk about progress, what's gone well, what hasn't gone well, and then looking over, forward a couple of weeks, what are the critical tasks that we're working on. So it's sort of an educational process and inclusive engagement by everybody. So, that's gone reasonably well. The capital plan, I'm a little late on, but I got it out. I've been working with the chair of the finance committee on that. And so we'll hopefully get something submitted relatively soon to the finance committee because they have responsibilities under the charter. But the department heads have been very responsive and helpful in getting, I've already received some preliminary proposals back from my department heads. And then the financial forecast is really a big deal. And it was kind of nice because the Department of Revenue actually gave us a template for a much more sophisticated financial forecast than frankly I used in Brewster, but I like it. It's more detailed oriented. And the way they've structured it is when you file all of your information with the Department of Revenue, you can populate this forecast. So it's a little more efficient and more accurate. So anyway, by the end of October, I hope to present along with Lisa and Mary, the forecast to the selectmen and the finance committee. Then you can sort of give us some direction on the budgetary process, and we'll roll right into the start working on the budget for FY23. The nice thing, the forecast is going to be pretty revealing. Is, do we have a problem? I believe we do. But what's the complexity of it? What's the range of it? So anyway, we're working away. We meet on that every week, and I work on it more so. And then Lisa and Mary have specific tasks within that they have more expertise on. But anyway, it's going okay. The town solar project, I did get a phone call from the company that is working with the town's energy committee, and that's pretty close. We have a couple of legal documents that have to be resolved. Council is working on them. I think that, there's a good possibility that we could be up and running for the new calendar year. And then also the consultant and the energy committee, I'll work with them to understand the financial aspects of the agreements that the town has, so I can build this into the budget, for next year, because obviously it's going to help. So that's going well. And then I did have a problem with my last item there with the insurance budget. We only appropriated $334,000. And it was underfunded by, over $68,000. And actually, just one of those things with the, all of the issues that we all were facing, because even we spent $371,000 in FY21. So it was just underfunded in the budgetary process. There was obviously a lot of moving parts. And I had mentioned this at the finance committee. I am not blaming Harry Tarkanian and Chief Polly, because what they did in crazy narrow window was terribly impressive. But anyway, we got this problem. I've entered into a payment plan with the insurance company, and I'll just do payments over 8 months, and then I'll deal with the rest of the shortfall at the December special town meeting. And then I'll just try, if I could, Ryan, because Rebecca's here, and I'd like to let her comment on her items. Oh, I'm sorry, one other thing. I did get a notice in the mail that the Cape Cod Technical High School is having a ribbon cutting ceremony on Friday, October 8th starting at 8:30 a.m. If anyone would like to go, let Rebecca know and we'll register you. I will say, I serve as the chairperson of the Cape Cod Tech Building Committee, but I won't be able to go. I have a conflict that day, but it's really a crazy impressive facility. So, and then Ryan, if I could pass the baton to Rebecca.
Yep.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Rebecca.
I just got out of class, so I was hoping I could catch the end here. So just bear with me for a second while I pull up the report. So Charlie, hopefully everything I wrote is what you included. I'll just go through the bullet points.
Yeah.
We'll start with the 95 Lawrence Task Force. We've been reviewing the bids. I gotta tell you that task force is amazing. They've been working really well together, divvying up different duties and checking references and going on site visits. We meet once or twice a week. We're gonna meet this Friday and we're hoping to have a decision by 10/26. Hopefully. Other procurement that I'm working on is the water main bid that's due on the 13th of October. We've extended the contract with Whitewater until the end of October, so we're good there. And then we are also, or that was for the water system bid, sorry, I got them mixed up. That one's due on the 12th. Also this week, I put together a bid package for the media services. That'll go out to bid within the next 2 weeks. We're hoping to contract for that by 11/1. Let's see what else. Also, I'm putting out a request for quotes next week for the repurposing of the dredge spoils. And our NRAB voted on the scope of work last week. They approved that, so that's good to go. I handed in 2 quarterly reports this week, one with Will for the dredging grant and one with Jim White for the water main. Charlie, did you talk about the grants that we received?
No, I thought I'd let you do that.
Okay, so we received an MVP grant for $589,600 for the Herring River Phase 1 final construction plans and bid specs. The Friends of the Herring River will be administering that grant with my oversight. We've got a kickoff meeting actually Thursday for that. And I know Hillary also got an MVP grant for $236,258 for a low-lying road feasibility study. She could probably tell you more about that one. What else do I have here? So also tomorrow, actually, I'm going to be meeting with Shannon to do the 5-year review on the community rating system. It's actually a new project for me. I haven't done that in past towns I worked in. But the town's participation in the CRS provides a 10% discount to all flood insurance policyholders in town. So I'll be the liaison with Barnstable County until the new building commissioner begins. And that's about it for me. Did I miss anything, Charlie? Caught me off guard.
Okay. John?
Yes, a question about the bids going out for the where is it? Media services. I know of somebody you might be interested in bidding. Who would I refer that individual to?
You can have them send me an email.
Okay.
So I actually put together a bid schedule. So let me just pull that up quick so I can tell you. Media services. All right. So 10/6, I'm looking to put it out. So next Wednesday.
So that's when that bidding starts.
Oh, wait a minute, sorry. No, that's when I have to do the goods and services. The 12th.
Okay, that's when the process would start, or when you have to
Yeah,
have them in.
that's when I can release the bid documents would be the 12th.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, but send me their contact information and I'll send it to them
Okay.
when it opens. Do you guys have any other questions for me? I know I've been I am in a master's program and I'm kind of getting down to the wire. So I'm on a Tuesday night class. So besides
Just going to
Good.
welcome you to Cape Cod now that you've moved out here. So
Thank you.
glad to have you out here, and welcome to Wellfleet, I guess.
Thank you.
Okay, before she goes, I know you have your hand up, Mike. Did you
Oh,
have
no.
a question for her?
I had a question for Charlie from before.
Okay.
So
Just I'm extremely uncomfortable with the Friends of the Herring River administrating funds on behalf of Wellfleet. I have zero confidence in their treasurer because the treasurer there is part of the reason that we're struggling now. Unfortunately. So I mean, when we had discussed some of these monies, it was never mentioned that the Friends would be administrating any of it, that the town would be seeking to keep control of the monies in some form or fashion. So I do not want the Friends of the Herring River administrating monies on behalf of Wellfleet. So Mike?
it's my understanding that the treasurer has resigned from that organization.
I mean, the mere fact that they kept him for that long is highly problematic. So
But what I was gonna say, I think John Reel is the treasurer for them now, but I believe we had talked about the grant money with Charlie going into a separate account that was basically not commingling with town funds.
Yeah.
But yeah, go ahead, Rebecca. I had a question for Charlie anyways.
Well, I just want to piggyback off what Ryan said. Maybe I misworded it. We actually do have control over the funds.
Yeah.
They are going to be administering mostly the quarterly reporting on behalf of the engineers that are doing our design and permitting and things like that. We actually have full control over the funds. So I'm sorry if I misspoke.
They flow through our treasury.
Yes, correct. And our accounting department. So it is administered by the town of Wellfleet.
okay, John?
Oh, okay. I just wanted to say that I share your concern, but apparently that's no longer an issue.
Okay. All right, so that's it for us, for you, Rebecca. So have a good night. All right, so Mike.
Thank you.
Charlie, I was just curious if we're still using the same auditing firm.
The answer is yes. They were under contract for 1 more year.
Okay.
I'm honoring that contract.
Okay. Thanks.
And I think I did report in the past, we'll see what happens when we get to the new year, but I will try to work on a RFP for, because the state does recommend that we go out for proposals for, and I'll try to get that drafted before I go anywhere.
Okay. Thanks, Charlie.
Okay, that was gonna be my next question, was to draft an RFP for it. Are there any other questions?
No.
Okay. So topics for future discussion.
Well, I think we've got to start focusing already on town meeting and making sure any department needs come before us and even get them discussed. That'll start taking up time.
Yeah, and we're coming into budget season as well.
Yeah.
So I just have two. Well, I mean, they updated you on 95 Lawrence Road. So the town administrative search committee, for the purpose of scheduling, I wanted to run this by the board and see what you thought in terms of scheduling. I'm thinking about having appointments of, I would say, internal appointments. So this would be like town staff on October 12th. And then have the appointments of the members of the public on the 26th. Because the advertisement we put out says that they are due to the town on the 19th of October. Is that okay with the board?
Sounds fine to me.
Is that, when you said town staff, is that the town staff that would be serving on the search committee?
Yes, if we so choose. So, you know, we could decide not to if we wanted to, or we could decide to have them serve. So,
but we would decide that at that time on the 12th?
Yep.
Okay, and on the 26th, I may be out of town, but that shouldn't be a problem because we're doing this on Zoom.
yeah, I mean, that's one of the big benefits of of this.
True. This is true.
Are there any topics that anybody else would like to bring up?
I guess it's probably not for the immediate future. Actually, I'll just reserve it. I don't even need to bring it up now.
Okay.
Like too much other stuff.
Okay, so correspondence and vacancy reports. Is there anything that anybody would like to discuss on these? Okay, seeing none, minutes. So I want to go through the minutes of August 27th. But I just haven't had the time to review the recording. So my recommendation would be to just move on the minutes of September 14th. If everybody else is okay with that.
Was there an issue with the minutes of the 27th?
I think so, yes. So it has to do with the Main Street portion of it. So.
I'm fine with just doing the 14th.
Okay. So I move to approve the minutes of September 14th, 2021, as printed in the packet.
Second,
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Janet, I.
John, I.
Michael, I.
Brian, I. Motion carries 4-0. Okay, I move to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Janet, I.
John, I.
Michael, I.
Brian, I. All right, good night, all. Awesome.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.